This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And I know what you guys are thinking. Well, those of you who watch the Onside Kick and the Primetime Podcast, you're probably sitting there going, Ricky, well, audio listeners ignore this, but YouTube watchers, you're probably sitting there going, Ricky, that shirt looks familiar. I think I've already seen you in that shirt this week. I put it on, and before I left my house, I just put it on just to have a shirt on around the house. And when I left, I got here and I was like, crap, I wore this yesterday for the Onside Kick. So you get me in the same shirt for 2 podcasts in a row. Usually I don't like to do that, Brandon, because I had a conversation with myself yesterday where it's I've got so many of these t-shirts. You got to spread the love to all the t-shirts. You can never have the same t-shirt twice in a row.
You had that conversation with yourself?
With myself in my head. Just kind of no, Ricky, you can't do that. You've got so many t-shirts that you've invested money in. You can't have 2 in a row of the same shirt. But I guess you guys get it because I'm an idiot and it's warm in here. I don't want to wear my jacket for that one. So we're going to get right into it. What we're talking about today, we're looking at conference tournaments. Who needs a strong performance going into March Madness? We're going to look at the NFL Draft Combine, and we're going to, or as some call it, just the NFL Combine. We're going to look at Sam Darnold. Is it a big deal? Is it a no deal that he's not going to be throwing at the Combine? Then we're going to take a look at the FBI probe in college basketball, how that affects college basketball. Fast break. We looked at how it affects the NBA. You and I are going to look at how it affects college basketball. Before we get into all that, real quick housekeeping. Number one, if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. That link down in the description. That helps us do what we like to do for you each and every day here on MVP. Also, you can check out the link for our MVP t-shirts. I don't have it on right now, but it's a pretty sick t-shirt. That link down below in the description. Make sure to bookmark mostvaluablepodcast.com. That's where everything for MVP is posted each and every day. And last but not least, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you have iTunes, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to both Brandon and myself. But B, let's get right into it. We're starting in the world of conference tournaments. And I was looking today where there are some conference tournaments that start tonight, like some of the little ones. Then tomorrow, as we're recording this on Tuesday, tomorrow starts the first round of the Big Ten tournament. So I saw that and I'm like, ooh, then we're going to get Big 12, ACC. And I'm like, oh, wait, the ACC and that, they finished their season on Saturday?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
But we've got some overlap, so that's why we're talking about it now. I'm blaming the Big Ten, really, for why we're talking about it now and not next week. But I want to go to you first. We're going to get right into it. Give me your first team. Who needs a strong conference tournament either to stay in the March Madness hunt or get into that March Madness hunt?
Well, I'm going to start off in the Big Ten, and I'm going to go with Penn State.
Okay.
And Penn State, a team that sits currently at 19-12 overall. They've lost their last 3 games. They dropped that close one on the road at Purdue, that 76-73 score. Then they lost at home against Michigan, 72-63, and then on the road against your team, Nebraska, 76-64. They're one of those bubble teams. I think they're currently in Joe Lunardi's first 4 out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if they could have themselves a nice run in the Big Ten tournament, they could find a way to, I think, finesse their way into the tournament, but they've got to be able to go somewhere here in the Big Ten tournament. They've got to play up to where they were when they were playing Ohio State this season, where they swept Ohio State, beat them on the road, beat them at home. If they can play like that, if that Penn State team shows up, I think that they can actually run the table there.
Well, and the thing with Penn State, just looking at the bracket for the Big Ten, and I'm going to try to have it pop up for our viewers on YouTube right now, they actually get the first, they're one of the teams that gets the first day bye. There's only 4 of them that get to play that Wednesday, which is Illinois and Iowa. Then Rutgers and Minnesota are the lucky 4 that finished low enough to play that first day. But they play Thursday. It'll be 5:30 Central Time that Penn State will play Northwestern in the Big Ten tournament. And the thing I like most about where they are in the bracket, yeah, you have to play Northwestern in your first game. You already know who you're going to play. They beat Northwestern already. They split this year. So they beat them at home 78-63. They lose 70-61 in Evanston, Illinois when they went to play the Wildcats. If they can get past that game, that'll be a good win for them. But then who do they get to play in that next game? Which top 4 team did they get matched up with? The Ohio State Buckeyes, a team that you mentioned they swept this year. Now, just because they beat them twice this year already doesn't mean they're automatically going to win this time. But if I'm Penn State, if there's any of the top 4 that I want to play coming out of my first game in the second round, it'd be Ohio State, because then I would say, hey, we know this team. We already know we can beat this team. We've beat them not once but twice. And that could give them the confidence to get to the semifinals where they could play. In my mind, they're either going to play Purdue or Indiana in that semifinal game if they make it.
Well, if I'm someone from the media, which we basically are, I don't...
Very low-end media.
I don't think... Whoa. I don't think that I would want to be playing Ohio State, because you have already beat them twice. And I mean, I say the same thing in baseball. It's really it's difficult to sweep a team. I mean, so it's impressive when you're able to go in and sweep a team, especially if it's on the on the road, something like that. So I think that's that's something that's tough to do, and that's why I get a little weary, because you already you got a lot of people probably expecting, oh, this is gonna be fine. We know Ohio State, we've beaten Ohio State. This is good. I don't know. I think I'd rather be playing Purdue, because you just lost to them. You know that you could beat them. That's who I'd want to be playing, but I still think you still have to get past day one and game one, which is Northwestern, which if it was Northwestern from last year, I'd say this is going to be a tough game, but it's not. It's a Northwestern that's kind of back to being mediocre, and I think that Penn State should win that first game, should being the key word, and then it'll be really interesting if they do get past Northwestern, how they fare against Ohio State, especially hopefully having the mindset of, yeah, we beat these guys already, but it doesn't matter. That's all in the past. I mean, Ricky, when we've broadcast, and we just got done broadcasting a tournament, doesn't matter what happened in the past.
No, it doesn't.
Does not matter what happened. All that matters is the game in front of you right now, and tournament time, everybody. The teams like Penn State,
any given Sunday.
Teams like Penn State are the teams that you have to be watching out for, because they're the ones that are going to get up to play.
Well, and the thing we enter right now is, like I said, the football term of any given Sunday can happen, but also if Penn State wants to go, and I'm going to throw in my team also, because you spoiled that one with Nebraska. I'm going to put in the same boat, where from now on, you've got to win, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You got to win 4 in a row if you want to get that automatic bid, if you want to win the whole thing. Now, is people saying that Penn State's going to win the whole thing? Probably not. I bet the money is more so on Michigan State, Purdue, with Ohio State, maybe Nebraska, but more so Ohio State being in that top 3 of putting bets on who's going to win the Big Ten tournament. The thing I like for Penn State that I don't like for Nebraska, before I go full on with Nebraska, is Penn State, if they do get to that conference championship and they do win that conference tournament championship, the possibility of teams, now I know upsets happen, so it's not a perfect world, but if no upsets happen, that means that they would play Ohio State after they beat Northwestern. So they'll get to play the number 2 team in the conference. Then the next game, they would play the number 3 team in the conference. And then barring any upsets, they play the number 1 team in the conference. So if you win out, there's a possibility that you're beating the 1, 2, and 3 team from the Big Ten, which throw that into it's hard to win 3 games. It's hard to beat the top 3 teams in the conference back to back to back in as many days. That's what Penn State has that Nebraska doesn't. However, the thing I like with Nebraska is they are finishing the year strong. They are one of the teams that, when you brought up Penn State, I was like, oh, like, you're talking about the team that lost to Nebraska? in the last game that we talked about. This is a team that since, let's say, if we went back since January 24th, one loss, and that was to my Fighting Illini in Champaign, down in Champaign. Then if we go even further back, ever since 2 days before my birthday, only 2 losses for this Cornhusker team. This is a team that only lost 5 times total in the conference, but really since January kind of started, they started getting it going. That 15th middle of January, they were off to the races, only lost 2 games. And the thing that's beneficial for them is now they don't know who they're going to play in that first game. Could be a number 5 Michigan, could be a number 12 Iowa, or, crossing my fingers, maybe, just hoping, maybe it's a number 13 Illinois. Maybe. A man can hope, right? But if they do win that first game, no matter who they play, then in that next game, barring any upsets, you got to keep saying that around this time, but there's a good chance that they could play the number 1 team in that semifinal game. And I think that if Nebraska, with where they are, just survive their first one and just get through it and win it, that's like the first one, whether it's Michigan, like Michigan would be a good win, but it'd be like, okay, that's a good win, not a great win. You then play Michigan State and beat Michigan State. That's one where it's like, okay, all right, you're a team that's, you just beat a team that's either a 2 or a 3 seed, depending on what bracketology you're looking at. All right, maybe you deserve to be in this dance. Maybe we got to look a little bit closer at you. And then if they make a run, they beat an Ohio State, they beat a Purdue, hell, even beat an Indiana in that conference championship game, more so Ohio State and Purdue, then not only would they get the automatic bid for winning the whole tournament, then it would be like, all right, you just beat 2 of the top 3 teams in this conference. What seeding do we have to put you at now that you have that automatic bid?
See, if I'm someone like I am on the outside looking in, I would not want Nebraska playing Michigan because Michigan's really been on a roll, and they're on a roll right now. I mean, just the way that they came out and they played against Maryland this past weekend on Saturday, they came out and they played really, really well, and they've got such good shooters on their team, especially from 3, and they had that on display Saturday as well. Michigan's not a team that I would want to be playing right now. So Nebraska, if they're matched up against Michigan, you know, that's an uphill battle. That's an uphill battle, I think. Even as well as Nebraska has been playing, like you said, to close out the season and the year, that's great. But Michigan has equally been playing just as well. So that would be a really tough matchup. I'd be really hoping for that other one, that either Illinois or Iowa. Well,
and I'm going to just throw out another team now. Another team that I think needs a strong tournament. And some of these, this one might be the one where people go, really? This team? I'm going to throw Duke out there. I think Duke needs a solid conference tournament because I'm looking at an article on 247sports.com, and this is the one for Virginia where they're saying, like, oh, this is what the ACC tournament would look like if the tournament started today. Duke would be the 2nd seed. I'm looking here. They'd play in the quarterfinals. They would win. So the teams that they could possibly play in that game would be either Miami. Then they would either play winner game 2. Got to look at that. Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, or Miami. Now, Miami would be a tough team for them to play. Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, I think if Pittsburgh got that far, Duke can handle them. But then they have the possibility of, all right, game 10 to 11, you're seeing maybe North Carolina in that semifinal game. And then most of the odds are that Virginia isn't going to get upset. And they go, barring upsets, they go to the championship game. So if there's no upsets, Duke has to beat either Miami, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, then play the Tar Heels, tough opponent, rivalry game, then play a very hard defensive team in the Virginia Cavaliers. And just based off of, I know that their regular season's not over yet, but just based off of the last game that they played the night before we're recording this podcast, they lose by 1 point yet again to Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech's a tough team, but now you've got, just in the conference, you've lost to Virginia already this season. You've lost to NC State. You've lost to North Carolina. You'll play them again on Saturday to end your regular season. You've lost to St. John's. You've lost to now Virginia Tech. And if they lose on Saturday, that means great. Out of the top 4 teams in the ACC, we haven't beat any of them. That's what I'm looking at if I'm Duke. Great. We lost to NC twice. We lost to Virginia. And we lost to NC State. They need to make a statement in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I think you're right. Duke, as good as they have been for most of the season, they really scuffled here in a couple of games in the second half. And I think it kind of all started with that loss to, who was it, St. John's, right? I think that, that happened, and then they had another tough loss, and then they have this loss the other night, and it's a little uncharacteristic, especially at this point in the season. This is usually when they're starting to play a lot of their best basketball, and moving to the conference tournament and then moving to the NCAA tournament. But I would agree with you. I think that Duke really has to get itself right and right the ship. Marvin Bagley looks to be readily available and healthy now to play, which they're going to need him if they want to be able to go anywhere in the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament. It really doesn't matter. They need him for both, and they also need Grayson Allen to start looking like the Grayson Allen we saw early in the season.
Well, and the other thing I look at is I'm looking at the number 1 seeds right now for Joe Lunardi. Virginia, Villanova, Kansas, and Xavier. And I know that the committee, when we talked about that preview, sent a message, but I'm going to throw North Carolina in here also because they're also on the 2 line right now for Joe Lunardi. If, let's say, Purdue loses to an Ohio State, Michigan State gets upset by maybe a Maryland, Wisconsin, Nebraska, or loses to like a Purdue or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, if then Duke or North Carolina could beat one or the other in the tournament and then play Virginia in the conference tournament and beat them, my question would be, could one of those teams with a tournament championship jump into the 1 line over a team like Kansas, which right now, Kansas 6 losses, Duke, North Carolina, similar losses, right around that 5-6 mark, where I look at Xavier, Villanova, and especially Virginia, 4-2 loss. It's like you don't have enough losses to jump Virginia. I think Virginia might be a pretty much of a lock for that 1 line, maybe just a one and done, and they could even be a 1 line, let alone winning the whole thing.
I think if Kansas, if what you say, if what you just said happens, if Duke's able to do everything that you said, beat North Carolina, beat, let's say, Virginia in there, whatever, in their tournament, and they win it, they're not jumping Kansas if Kansas wins theirs.
You think so?
Yeah, because they've equally kind of had, Kansas has actually been playing a lot better as of late. They were scuffling kind of in the middle to late middle of the season. I thought, especially when early February 11th, I think when that way too early preview came out, that's when I thought, when they were a 2 or whatever they were, I'm like, please get out of here. But they've actually played a lot better since then. But no, I don't think Duke would jump them. I don't think Duke would jump them because they've equally had kind of a, I don't want to say a shaky season, but a shaky last couple of weeks of the season. And if they both win their conference tournament, then no, I don't think there's even really, in my mind, any question for Duke to be able to jump them. But, however, if Kansas does not win their conference tournament and Duke does win their conference tournament, then there's maybe a discussion there to say, okay, well, the two are similar and pretty equal in how they did things in the regular season, but Duke won its conference tournament. Kansas did not. Maybe Duke is up there at the 1. But I see that if they both win it, nothing changes.
Well, and here's the thing I want to throw out, because we'll kind of pull the Big 12 into this a little bit too, is I wonder with either North Carolina or Duke, if they can run the table and win their tournament, what to you screams more impressive for a resume? I know with Duke, the thing that whole body of work comes in where it's like, yeah, but you lost to St. John's and you did lose to possibly twice to the Tar Heels, and you lost to Virginia already. Do we erase that just because you ran the table now? Duke might be a hard one. North Carolina might be able to do this, but with Kansas, the thing when it comes to my mind is the wins that you're adding. I would say that a win over Duke or North Carolina for whoever wins that game, and then possibly a win over a one-seeded Virginia Cavalier team would be more impressive than, as of right now, Kansas in their first game would play. Well, really, I'll ignore the first game because I did that for Duke and North Carolina. In that semifinal game, they would, if barring upset, they'd play the 4 seed, which right now would be the Kansas State Thundercats. I'm sorry, that's not as impressive as North Carolina or Duke right now. And then in that championship game, they're playing, barring upset, if we're just going top seed, either West Virginia or Texas Tech, which right now would be West Virginia because they're the 2 seed as we're recording this. I think Kansas State and West Virginia, not as impressive as North Carolina or Duke, depending on who we're going with, and a win over a number 1 seeded team. Because basically you're beating a 2 line and a 1 line in your conference tournament. That's the only reason why maybe with a championship, even if Kansas runs the table, you put that into it a little bit. How tough is the Big 12 compared to the ACC?
Yeah, you can make the argument at that point, but I still don't know if you're going to be able to make it enough to unseat Kansas as the 1 there.
You got one more team you want to throw out?
Yeah, I've got another one, and this may be a little surprising, and it does come from the Big 12, and it's not Oklahoma. It's Texas Tech. Ooh. Texas Tech has lost their last 4 games. At one point it was looking like Texas Tech was going to be going on a roll to be able to win the Big 12, and now not necessarily certainly not outright because of Kansas beating them the other night.
Right now they got downgraded to a 4 seed on Joe Lunardi's bracketology.
And I do want to say that I understand that within these last couple of games they haven't had some of their best players. I know Evans has been injured; he hasn't been himself. And they still almost beat Kansas the other night, 74-72. But we know that they're going to the tournament. We know that they're going to the NCAA tournament. I expect them to make it pretty far in the Big 12 tournament. But what they need to do, because they were pretty darn good for most of the season, and I think I was surprised by the Red Raiders to be as good as they were this year, to be as efficient, as effective, as a really kind of a potent team. I just want to see them be able to get back to that, win a couple of games in that Big 12, maybe even win the Big 12 tournament to say, hey, we're back, we're good, we're ready for the NCAA tournament, and we want to be looked at as a real contender here. We want to be looked at as a real contender, and let me tell you is that when I was watching College Game Day this past Saturday, and Reese Davis was doing everything with the guys with Seth Greenberg and with Jay Williams and Jay Bill, all of them. I think that they all believed that Texas Tech was at least going to get to the Sweet 16, possibly further. So Texas Tech really has a lot of really good potential, especially with this team when healthy, which it sounds like they will be for the both tournaments. I want to see some good things out of Texas Tech to help reassert themselves as a strong team moving ahead to the NCAA tournament.
Well, and the thing that I'll add before we do the last part we were going to do here, because we're kind of running with time on the camera, the Big 12 to me is going to be the most interesting conference tournament, only because we talked about them at the beginning of conference play. Ooh, could this be the toughest conference? And depending on how you see it, yeah, it could be seen as the toughest conference, but it's kind of like the ACC's here, the Big 12 is here. Sorry for my audio listeners. ACC is up here. The Big 12 is down here. You're competitive in your own mold, but you still have that conference where it's like, man, they're just a different level of team. They're a different level of seeding, and like where Texas Tech is like on the 4 line. And you could look at that and say, well, yeah, that's because maybe the committee or like the Joe Lunardis or that doesn't give the Big 12 the respect. It's all in the ACC because the ACC has the most teams right now. But I wonder if it's going to be, hey, our conference isn't as looked at the same way as like an ACC right now. We got to win this. We got to win this conference tournament, get that automatic bid. Then they can't say anything. Then they can't say, oh, you're out. No, I'm in. Here's my ticket. Go ahead and punch it. Punch it right now because I won this tournament. That's what could make the Big 12 tournament fun to watch and the most competitive, even though they're not the 1 and 2 seeds like we were talking about with the ACC.
Yeah, but I don't think that you're for the most part going to get that. I mean, we have to be excited this year that there's other teams to talk about in the Big 12 really outside of Kansas. You know, for how long has Kansas really overshadowed everyone else?
Kansas.
So for the first time in a while, the fact that, you know, Kansas wasn't going to outright win the Big 12. You know, that's kind of big news. That's kind of big news. And for Texas Tech to, again, be where they are, for West Virginia to still be around where they are. Oklahoma had the magic early on. They got to win the other night. So there's probably still going to be a lock for the tournament. They're certainly not going to be where they were, 10 weeks ago. But, I think that there's still another team that'll be there. So the Big 12 has come to play this year for sure, but the ACC, they seem to be a league. Excuse me, not a league. Well, they feel like a league of their own, but certainly a what's the word I'm looking for? Conference that's just always filled with talent. When you have North Carolina, when you have Duke, when you have Virginia, those teams don't seem to ever get bad, except for maybe, once within a 5-year period.
Here's how we're quickly going to end this. Rapid fire. I'm going to give you a Power 5. You just tell me the team. Well, you give a team, I give the team of who we think is going to win that conference tournament. You ready? ACC, go.
Virginia.
North Carolina. Big 12.
Texas Tech.
Kansas. Big 10.
Purdue.
We're agreeing on that one. They're going to beat Nebraska in the Big 10 championship game. Book it. SEC.
Auburn.
I'm going to go with Tennessee. Tennessee right now playing Mississippi State as we're recording this. Last one, the Pac-12.
I think I've watched a Pac-12 basketball game this year.
I'm going to go with Southern California, Arizona right now on the little bit of a downcline right now. Plus, how long is Sean Miller going to be out?
I disagree with what I just said because I just watched the other night at the bar the Oregon game against Arizona. So you're right, they are kind of on the downcline. But I'm still going to go with Arizona because I can't think of anybody else.
Well, Arizona's a team where it's like they're streaky. When they're good, they're good. But they've had games this year where it's kind of like Duke, where it's like, really, you lost to that team? You lost to that team? Like, that's a team you lose against? Plus, the whole Sean Miller FBI probe, we're going to get into it later. Kind of a little sketchy, but this is where you guys come in and let us know what you guys think. What are some teams that need a big March Madness Conference tournament slate? And who do you think will win each of the Power 5 tournaments or the small tournaments? If you want to tell me those, if you want to pick every tournament winner, I'll go ahead and read through them. So let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.